Hello, welcome. It's 4:20. Let's get high. So, I've been reading from my book, Zohar-Beyond the BlackWhole. And we had the introduction and then the whole part sort of explaining the Zohar and the whole history. And then the major part of the book is actually taking the first 13 chapters, not the 13 paragraphs in the Zohar and translating them and explaining. Now, after all that is like the sort of the end of this book, which has to do with the ramifications of this information being revealed in the world at this time. So the first heading is of chapter 8 is Why 2020? Zohar was written in heaven 1,000 years after Rabbi Shimon passed away. From memories he took with him to heaven, the amazing conversations concerning Torah during his time on earth 2,000 years ago were possessed in heaven as a concordance of material by which to clothe the brilliant light from the other side of the black hole. Rabbi Shimon was able to sneak the knowledge of Zohar down to Tevel by disguising the truth in Aramaic, a language unknown to the angels who guard Shar HaShamayim, the gates of heaven. Also, as part of the needed attenuation from Shamayim to Tevel, the book Zohar reads easier in Aramaic than the original Hebrew etched into the firmament of heaven. This sublime knowledge was immediately recognized by those enmeshed in Torah, yet none could untangle the mystery encapsulated in these words. Even now, those with a clear understanding of ancient Hebrew and Aramaic are dumbfounded by the concepts proposed in the text, plus descriptions of worlds unknown to the earth. Yet, scattered throughout are amazing insights into Torah, into Emet, truth, which only someone of Rabbi Shimon's stature could have delivered. Towards the end of the massively worded text of Zohar, Rabbi Shimon exclaims, "These words are meant for the end of days, without Sof Yomim, without giving an explanation as to why. There are many visions and prophecies concerning these end. The 777 is the gematria of God's futuristic name, Ihyeh. 7 includes the 6 days of creation with the 7th day of rest. 7 indicates end. What the Jewish people know is the 2,000-year exile of Rome is ending. Now is when Zohar is needed and can be understood. The 6,000-year Hebrew calendar, like the 5,000-year Mayan calendar, has a precise beginning and end. The Roman calendar is capricious, a mythical beginning continuing without an end. Rome's conquest of the world has solidified in America, where in the year 2017, 5,777, and An eclipse of the sun by the moon crossed the Bible Belt of America. In the same year, Trump was elected president, the beginning of the end. When Trump was inaugurated, he was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days. By 2020, 50 years since the human species reached the half-life of carbon-14, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic on March 11th, 2020, when there were 7,700,000,000 and 77 million, 7,770,000,000 people on the earth. Table 777. The end is apparent. The end of the male agenda was his charted drunken path off to oblivion, fueled by the lie. The Zohar clearly establishes the confines of creation and how God's will is being played out on table, as if a play of 6 movements, orchestrated by the stars blowing in the wind. In 220 years, the 1,000 years of woman and peace will open up to receive the 6,000 years of man who has been ruling the world and now is being challenged to give everything to woman. Man is forbidden to spill his seed upon the ground, but in our times, man is spilling his seed into outer space, leaving the world ransacked and broken. All the mechanization and technological advances brought about by a worldwide coalition to explore the ends of the universe, while the world seethes in pain and poverty, is like the tower against God. Humanity has been exploited for an absurdity. There is nothing in this universe like our planet Earth. Mother Earth. This errant behavior can be traced back to the Big Bang Theory and all the pernicious ramifications coming from the assumption of something coming out of nothing. Coinciding with our time, the end of days, rampant scientific discoveries from the atom to the edges of the universe are all echoing the words of Zohar. Our time is a time of great global darkness when the truth is completely obscured. A word translating as brilliance has come to our rescue. In the years of Rabbi Shimon on table 2,000 years ago, rainbows were non-existent anywhere on the planet because the light emanating from Rabbi Shimon as a conduit for spiritual illumination restrained the prismatic diffusion of light throughout the globe. Though his compatriots begged him to write down the words of Zohar, Rabbi Shimon refused until the very end is chronicled in the book Zohar, knowing the light would be too bright and would eradicate the other 3 levels of Torah. Rabbi Shimon dared not dictate a transcript into a written text during his lifetime. Plus, the knowledge of Zohar, the hidden knowledge from the far side of the black hole, was not pertinent to the world until now. The conclusion of the final 1,000-year cycle is only a couple of centuries away. The time has come to make the transition between the 6,000 years of man and the long-awaited 4,000 years of woman and peace. Rabbi Shimon understood the light emanating from Zohar, illuminated from the other side of the black hole, is where the vessel and the light are one. His time on earth was a profoundly sad time. The second temple was being destroyed by Rome and the Jewish people thrown out into the world to be exiled from the land of Israel. The 2,000 years of teaching begun when Abraham left the Tower of Babel was ending. Beginning was the 2,000 years of travail and peace. Knowing his to bring forth the light from Zohar, Rabbi Shimon waited until after his death, recounted of the book Zohar. By incorporating his earthly conversations into his transmissions from heaven to earth, he was able to more easily bridge the gap. But even so, Rabbi Shimon needed to start his transmission hundreds of years before the book Zohar would actually become a meaningful resource for the world. That time has come. But why now? What is special about this time that Zohar should be routine and eclipsed by the sun? The eclipse of the sun by the moon happened across the American Bible Belt. The year was 5777. In the Hebrew calendar, with only a couple of centuries left into the beginning of a new era, Trump was elected in that same year. The culmination of 6,000 years was happening. The next 4 years were rift with lies and absurdities, trying to wrest away the future in favor of the past. God judges countries by the majority, and in the election of 2020, a majority of Americans voted for the future. The past came to conclusion. January 6th, 2021, with the siege against the Capitol building of the United States of America. Trump is closely connected to the 777 through his age. At the inauguration, he was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days. This last-ditch failed effort to overturn the election was also the end of this male impurity, putrefying America, and therefore the world. America is the little world made of immigrant people from around the globe living together in peace. Now it is incumbent on America to act. Now is the time when Zohar is needed to light the way to the future. There is only one Emet, truth. But Emet, truth, has infinite facets. God creates and sustains creation constantly. Zohar is the pinnacle of Emet, from where grows the infinite expressions of light obliterating the darkness and despair brought about from relying on errant beliefs instead of knowing. There is kindness and love flowing everywhere, within everything. Zohar is pertinent in our time more than any other time, since instrumentation has been developed able to corroborate the ancient words from Zohar. Thereby, Rome must relinquish their cold hold on reality and stop feeding the unsuspecting lies that a Big Bang created creation or some spiritual God did it in a blink of the eye. Truly, there is only one choice in life. Everything stems from a wakefulness to the Creator, being present for everyone all the time. The beginning of wisdom is fear. Fear is a recognition of what is. One glimpse into reality and sudden change occurs. Zohar comes to clarify and to prove from our own instrumentation this is God's world, and we are here to partake in pleasure within the restraints of the 7 commandments given by Borei to all people. The earth is a paradise, ready to be, and for the Borah, creation. The word Kovid, as in COVID-19, has three meanings in Hebrew: Kovid respect, Kovid heavy, Kovid liver. These three different meanings correspond to our thoughts, emotions, and actions. The human being is judged for their intentions, which are found in the head. Covet, respect, stems from the head, then blossoms into emotions, more evident and easier to read. Thoughts are hidden in the mind, but emotions are easily shared, particularly when the heart is kaved, heavy. The kaved liver purifies the blood, wherein the aspect of the soul animating the body, everything. Since the aspect of life is intertwined within an intricate array of light and darkness, is far more complex than any technology could ever express. Moreh sent COVID to the earth because the world was spinning out of control, because progress had become cancerous and crazy with greed. Zohar traces greed back to the primordial serpent who had sex with Chava, whose original name was Chaya, life giver, but later changed to Chava to include the Chavia, serpent in Aramaic. Because of her intercourse with Nachesh, serpent, her name changed to Chava. As a result of having sex with the serpent, she gave birth to two children Cain possess, and Hevel breath. Hevel was from the seed of Adam, and Cain was from the seed of the Nachish serpent. Cain killed Hevel, beginning 10 generations of retribution, ending with the great flood. Alma, the wife of Noah, came from the seed of Cain, while her husband was from Sheth. Adam and Chava's third and final son. The three sons of Noah correlated to the three major colors: blue, white, red, black, and green, yellow, who divided the world east, west, and south, Asia, Europe, and Africa. The people preceding the flood were more ephemeral, light creatures, eventually toning down into color before evolving into skin. In Hebrew, the word for light, or the word for in Hebrew, the word for skin, or, is the same sounding as the word or light. So the word or skin is the same sound as the word for or light. The same sound, but written differently. Every aspect of life can be unraveled so hard, needed in our time because of the pervading darkness precludes the light. The greatest darkness is just before the dawn. Now is the time of Zehira, illumination, because the greatest light comes out of the darkness, like the light of the eye comes from the black people. Where to from here? We stand upon the precipice of change, of real change, supplanting the paved over virtual reality of the victor's constant historical fabulation, the elaborate consortium. Inherited generational lies have drained truth from reality. A veneer of bullish excrement is all that is left. The steady diet of lies plus the constant brutalization of the individual is bad enough, but proclaiming God as monotheism, inferring the highest spiritual entity is beyond lie. It is blasphemy. The knowledge of heaven and earth has been filtered through the maniac ego of mercurial figures hungry for power over other people, a perception personified by the church. Those not mindful of God being everywhere all the time to everywhere see only themselves. All their endeavors are breached by embarrassment from the lies they conceive, propagating false conclusions and deliberately inducing their latest addiction. Only truth can break through this vile veneer of vitriolic politics. Though God is not spiritual, God uses heaven to communicate to earth through the angels and prophets. Every people have their righteous and sages. But a prophet is something different, more sublime, more connected to heaven than to earth. Prophecy exists across the globe and beyond boundaries. However, there are only two books of prophecy. They are the Torah and the Quran. The Semitic people, the Arabs and the Jews, are direct descendants from Abraham, who 4,000 years ago came to earth from the Tower of Babel built on Mars. Abraham was imbued with the secret of language, plus the knowledge of the 22 movements of the mouth. Abraham was able to construct a phonetic language for each son, Ishmael and Yitzchak, according to their positions. Ishmael was his first son, born from an Egyptian princess called Hagar. He was strong, bold, ruling the desert with his arrows, meaning he was a virile man. Arabic is an emotionally written calligraphy, a language full of intrigue, curves dancing across the page. Whereas Abraham's second son was known for his love of truth, Yitzchak was more intellectual. Thus, the structure of the Hebrew language is reflected in the straight lines with little of the Arabic maneuvers found in Arabic. These two tongues from these two sons constitute the beginning of phonetic language in the world. Later, Abraham would marry Keturah and have 6 sons, who he sends to the east with another language, but without a written form, Sanskrit. From these 3 fundamental Indo-European languages, the world was blessed with true prophets and wisdom books. Prophecy can come in any language. Prophets speak the words of prophecy in an earthly language throughout the world, but only the Arabs and Jews, the Semitic people, have prophetic books. The spiritual nature and singular ability of these 2 languages to be read on various levels of consciousness without breaking the continuity and clarity of the message is extraordinarily, even wondrous. The Jewish people received the Torah 3,500 years ago, while the Arab people received the Quran 2,000 years ago. Both books come from heaven, according to the will of God. The Torah and the Quran can stand together without contradiction, the sign of prophecy. There was a time 3,000 years ago when prophets proliferated the land of Israel. There were schools for prophets, and there were gangs of prophets wandering fields everywhere, throwing off their clothes, reaching stakes of ecstasy, drawing down wisdom clothed in the world, singing and dancing as a result of prophetic visions. But the time of the prophets has ceased for over 1,000 years. Muhammad was the last prophet. Some prophets left books, while others just spoke prophecy pertinent only to their time. There are 24 Jewish books of Hebrew prophecy, beginning with the first 5 books of Moshe, the prophet, plus the book, plus one book of Arabian lineage, the Quran from Muhammad the prophet. Jewish, and if found inaccurate, would forfeit their lives. If the prophet proclaimed rain from sunup to sundown, and the rain ended an hour before the sun set, kill the prophet because he is false. The Arab people until recently lived peacefully with the Jewish people, acknowledging all the Jewish prophets along with Muhammad the prophet. Jesus is a Jewish prophet whose prophecy was not in his words, but in his deeds. He was not crucified and did not die for anyone's sins. Dying in sins are an individual's responsibility. The purpose of the Semitic people, the Arab and Jews, are to be heavenly funnels through which illumination can permeate the globe, bringing relief in the form of light. Zohar is not prophecy, nor was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai a prophet. Rather, Zohar represents the 4th level of Torah. The written Torah is the declination of the 613 commandments given specifically to the Jewish people. The text hints at laws by which to clarify and observe the 613 commandments commanded only to the Jewish people, the chosen people who were chosen for this purpose. Jewish laws resulted from the collected dialogue of the Jewish people for 1,500 years before being written down 2,000 years ago. The 3 levels of the oral tradition are based upon the Talmud, connecting the written word of the prophecy with the law. Spliced in amid the law are stories. Some of the stories are fantastical, miraculous, impossible, even laughable. A well-known Jewish saying, if you want to learn what to do, learn the law. But if you want to learn the truth about life, learn the stories. Called Agadah, tales. The 2nd level of the oral Torah, Medrash, exposition of law, extending the path of the law into story and metaphor until finally Zohar speaks the truth into conversation. The stories inspired by the law are like the leaves of a tree alluding to a hidden fruit. The tree of life is rooted in the written Torah. The trunk to the tree of life has limbs where the law expands into different segments. The leaves are the Medrash and the fruit is Zohar, the 3rd and final level of oral Torah. Zohar is a conversation between Rabbi Shimon and a Spanish Kabbalist, Moshe Shem Tov de Leon. 700 years ago in Spain, Zohar is the ultimate fruit of the tree of life, a light from the far side of the black hole. Though written in our time, the light Zohar, though written for our time, the light Zohar required 700 years of clarification, taking on physical dimension like a drop of water passing through the ground on the way to the sea. Zohar is a glimmer into the truth. But this little bit of light is enough to brighten the entire world. A light from beyond religion or even spirituality. A light for the future. The darkness and lies of our time have caused Zohar to be revealed into the world for all to see the abundant knowledge and wisdom needed to correct our course through the cosmos. The fruit The fruit on the tree of life has germinated inside the flower of the Kabbalah. Key to Zohar, and finally delivered to our world in our time, the end of days. The Zohar is destined to effectuate a sudden change around the globe, bring about world peace through the conservation of life on the 7 continents of the earth, along with the 3 oceans. The fruit has at last ripened and is ready to be picked. Whoever eats from the tree of life will have their eyes opened, as did our primordial ancestry. The first 2 human beings locked within one androgynous and ethereal body. All right. Thank you for listening. Check out my website, dovidhouse.com. See you tomorrow. Stay high.